सिन्दूरारुणविग्रहा त्रिनयना माणिक्यमौली स्फुरत् तारानायकशेखरा स्मितमुखी मापीनवक्षोरुहा पाणिभ्यामलिपूर्णरत्नचषकम् रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् परामम्बिकाम् सान्निपातिकज्वर सततज्वर विषमज्वर ग्रह नक्षत्र दोषाञ्चान्या हर हर काली सर सर गौरी गम विद्ये आले माले काले बन्धे भज भज विद्ये मख मख विद्ये नाशय नाशय पापम् हर हर दुःस्वप्नम् विध्वंसय विध्वंसय विघ्नविनाशिनि रजनी सन्ध्ये मुन्दुभिनादे मानस्तोषे मानसवेगे शङ्खिनी चक्रिणी वज्रिणी गदिनी शूलिनी अपमृत्युविनाशिनी विश्वेश्वरी द्राविडी केशवदैते पशुपति सहिते धीममर्दिनि गमनी कामिनी शबरी विराटी वाचक्री ॐ द्रं 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 ॐ द्रं गुरु गुरु
Namaste, Suprabhatam. Good morning, good evening to all of you, and welcome you all to this 30th day on the Global Festival of Yoga. And I think, if I'm right, we are almost today nearing the 88th session on this beautiful Global Festival of Yoga, brought to you by Indica Yoga, which just have the mission and motto of bringing out authentic, immersive, and transformative streams of yoga to all our yogic aspirants. And in this Global Festival of Yoga, for all these days, we have been seeing multiple dimensions of yoga brought forth by various yogic stalwarts from all corners of the world. And it's not only about asana or pranayama or meditation. It has been about mudras, about mantras, about nritya and yoga, about chantings and yoga on various dimensions of yoga, Ayurveda and yoga, with all those brought together. we have been doing a wonderful, yoga malika, like in a garland, we have flowers brought from various plants put together. That is how, the global festival has been decorated with various flowers from various gardens. And when you think of yoga, Krishna's definition of yoga in Bhagavad Gita, because Bhagavad Gita is a valid yoga shastra, we had sessions on that as well. So where Krishna starts forth with ahara, he says yuktahara viharasya yukta cheshtasya karmasu yukta swapna avabodhasya yogo bhavati dukkha. So the definition of yoga starts from the right way of eating. Eating right is also yoga. It's very important. And therefore, the Global Festival of Yoga has rightly thought that we need to bring this dimension as well. And there are many people who have been contributing to this field. We have many people for years together. They have been doing wonderful research and have been adding this dimension of diet and food and the way of eating and living also as part of yoga. But today we have young, energetic doctor with us, Dr. Apar Savaji, who is going to present us on food for health. On this aspect, he is going to present today in this Global Festival of Yoga. I take this opportunity to welcome all the participants who have been regularly, for whom this Global Festival of Yoga has become a Nitya Karma. So all of them are here with us. I welcome all the participants and also all the panelists. And I welcome Dr. Apar Savaji to join with us. Welcome, Apar. And it's a privilege for me to welcome him. He is my younger brother in the yoga family. And as we all know, SVYASA has been a very important organization in the field of yoga, decades together of contribution in terms of yoga research as well as teaching and propagation. And we are very happy that Dr. Apar Savaji is a deputy director of SVYASA's School of Naturopathy and Yogic Science, which is contributing and bringing a lot of young yoga naturopathy doctors to the world. And Dr. Apar Savaji is leading as his deputy director. And before that, he had done his bachelor's in naturopathy and yogic science BNYS from Dharmasthala SDM College of Naturopathy and Yogic Science, where he had been a golden boy, a golden student, I would say, who had got number of gold medals. I think it would be not less than 3 gold medals that he had got for various academic achievements. He has been the university topper for naturopathy in the Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, Karnataka. And after that, he had taken up his PhD in yoga from SVYASA, where he has done his research on the psychophysiology of the yogic breath retention, which is Kumbhaka. On that, he has done his research and published not less than 12 research papers. And still, there are a lot of research work which he is spearheading, and many publications are yet to come. Along with leading the BNY school, he is also in charge for the master's degree for doctors, which is MD in yoga and rehabilitation from SVYASA. So Apar is also leading that. He is part of many research projects. He has visited many countries in taking yoga and naturopathy to all corners of the world. And before joining SVYASA, he had also been part of the National Institute of Naturopathy, the prestigious naturopathy institution at Pune. He had worked there as a consultant as well. And then he joined SVYASA, which is his own family. It has been his own home. I would say he was one of the youngest yoga teachers, probably in his teens, who got certified as a yoga teacher from SVYASA. Even though he still looks like that, the wonder is, I think that is what it is. He has been following the yogic diet along with the yoga practices as well. So he's still the same as probably 15 years back, probably when he was 15 years old. We have all seen him. Even today, he is the same. And after coming there at that young age, today people come to SVYASA to do courses. It's very well known. So people coming there today is not a great deal. But all these people whom we have been seeing, it could be like Melinda or many others whom we have seen in this forum. They've all been with SVYASA for years together when it was less known. So that is where, as a young yoga aspirant, probably just after finishing his basic primary education in school, Dr. Apar at the time joined there to do his certification program. And then the interest further took him to naturopathy. And today he is one of the stalwarts in this field at a very young age, well recognized all over the world. I would say it's a privilege to welcome Dr. Apar Savaji for this session on yoga, food, and the yogic diet for health. Thank you, Apar, for being with us. Welcome you.
Thank you, Subbu. Suprabhatam to everyone. It's so nice to be introduced by somebody who's my elder brother to the gathering. And yoga, in the true sense, is union. So this is a reunion that all of us are having here, and this has been a wonderful initiative by Indica Yoga. My privilege to contribute a session. I'm just going to share my screen with all of you. Is it visible? Food essentially is probably the single factor that would determine if you are healthy or not. And there has been a lot of work that has happened across the world about what is good for health, what is not good for health, and all of that. But it is not the recent scientific evolution, but the importance of food was known right from the beginning. Hippocrates was considered to be the father of medicine, also said that food should become your medicine and medicine should be your food. So medicine and food were equivalent. In fact, even in Ayurveda, we talk of how ahara is extremely important. um, Looking at it from the modern nutrition perspective, we keep talking of how the food has to be balanced. You should have all the nutrients. There should be carbs, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals. But the approach of the modern nutrition is a little more reductionist in terms of nutrition. What the modern nutrition teaches us is our body is a machine which requires fuel, and this fuel is given by calories that we receive from food. But when it comes to yoga, it has a very, very profound understanding of the food, which is spoken in Taittiriya Upanishad. We are all very well aware of the Panchakosha model that comes from Taittiriya Upanishad. And the first kosha that we talk about is Annamaya Kosha. We keep talking about how our body is generated from, nourished and sustained by, and as well as after, at the end of our body's period, it merges with Anna. And that is why that is one of the greatest elements that creates human life, and it is considered to be the supreme medicine in Taittiriya Upanishad. Chandogya Upanishad goes one step further and says that your mind is generated out of your food. It says the coarsest part of the food becomes the feces, the subtler part becomes the flesh, and the subtlest part is the mind. And therefore, if you want to keep your mind pure, you will have to eat pure. And that is where probably we are very different in our approach to food than the modern nutrition. So what we understand now is that every time we are eating something, every time we open our mouth to eat a bite, we are either feeding a disease or fighting it. And that is what I will reiterate. Food is the single most important factor that will determine if you are healthy or not. And therefore, it is very, very imperative that we choose the right kind of food. Now, there are so many questions when it comes to eating correctly. Okay, and probably through the session, I would like to bring together the best of both worlds, what the modern nutrition also understands and what the yogic wisdom tells us about how we should be eating, what we should be eating, answering the WH questions about food. So to start with, when do we eat? We eat when we are hungry, naturally, but we also eat when we are happy, when we are sad, when we are depressed, when we are having events and get-togethers and parties, which unfortunately in recent times are not possible, but then that is another avenue when people eat. So looking in totality, probably human being eats at any given point of time. And if you look at nature, human being is the only animal which eats even if they are not hungry. You take any other animal in the world, they eat only when they are hungry. Otherwise, they don't touch the food. And therefore, the problems that human beings have, probably no other animal in the world has. And therefore, it is very important for us to understand what exactly is hunger and appetite. Hunger is the physical need of the body to eat. Basically, like what the modern nutrition tells us, food is a fuel for giving energy to the cells that we have. And therefore, the moment the fuel is low, you start feeling to eat. Okay, that is the physical need to eat. And therefore, it cannot be ignored. Generally, it is gradual in onset. It is time dependent, diminishes with eating any kind of food. So if you're hungry and you eat anything, there is no problem, you will start feeling satisfied. Unfortunately, we don't rely on hunger to eat. Most of the times, our food habits are related to appetite, which is more of desire. And for the sensory gratification through food. And therefore, it is for a particular substance, maybe an ice cream, maybe a sweet, or something like that. It can be ignored, but unfortunately, most of us do not ignore it. It is rapid in onset. You must have had a stomach full meal, but then you see an ice cream, you suddenly start feeling hungry. You know, the appetite, the desire to eat is very quick. It is not time dependent. It can be any given point of time. It persists even after eating, and it is satisfied by only the food that you wanted to eat and nothing else. The cravings, and that is where the mind is playing a role. And therefore, when we want to take home a message from here, what we need to also understand is the tongue versus tummy. Our tongue is about 1.5 inches, and beyond that, human body does not have any place where we can feel the taste of food. It is absolutely same if I'm eating a kashaya or an ice cream beyond my tongue. But unfortunately, for that 1.5 inches, we spoil the entire body. And therefore, the first take home message that we need to carry whenever we are thinking about food is eat only when you are hungry. Do not eat just because you have desire to eat it. And that is where our yogic wisdom will come in picture. Our control over the mind is going to come in picture. And therefore, we will have to start doing that to remain healthy. The second thing is, when should we have our food? It is said that 1 meal a day, you are a yogi, 2 meals a day, you are a commoner, 3 meals a day, you can become a rogi, 4 meals or more, in Kannada they say etkond hogi, means you can go to the cremation ground, because there is so much of health problems that one can have if you have multiple meals a day. Now, science also tells us that what is called as intermittent fasting, which is a recent trend which is across the world. Intermittent fasting is basically you have a eating window of about 8 hours and then a fasting window of about 16 hours in a day. Now, if you follow this kind of a routine, what would happen is you can prevent a lot of health problems like obesity and insulin resistance and diabetes and chronic degenerative problems, neurodegenerative problems, and all of that. And therefore, what is suggested, and this is where naturopathy also talks of 2 meals a day for a commoner. 2 meals, 1 meal at about 10:30, 11ish, and you have your brunch there. And at about 6:37, at, at the time of Sandhya Vandana, in the evening, you finish your dinner. And therefore, the dinner has to be light and early so that there is enough time for us to digest and rest. The next question that I would like to answer is, how do we eat? One of the things that we talk in Nisargopchar or Prakritik Chikitsa is you drink your solids and eat the liquids. You chew your food so much that it becomes liquid in your mouth, And when you do that, what happens? There are a couple of things that would happen. One, it would basically get mixed with saliva in the mouth, which has a lot of digestive enzymes, and therefore digestion would start there. Second, you start feeling the taste of the food for a longer time, and that sends the signals to a place in brain called as hypothalamus, which has the satisfaction center. It is called as the satiety center. The longer you send the signal from mouth to the satiety center, the lesser is the desire to eat, and therefore feel the flavor of food that you're consuming. Then the second thing that we talk about is half the stomach should be filled with solids, 1/4 with liquids, and 1/4 should remain empty, as it is spoken in Mitahara's definition in Hatha Yoga. It should be sweet and agreeable food eaten keeping 1/4 of the stomach empty. Now, why you need to keep the stomach empty? It is your stomach essentially works like a mixer grinder. Okay, and if the jar of the mixer grinder is full, the mixing will not happen properly, the digestion will not happen properly, and therefore keep 1/4 of the stomach empty when you are consuming food. Now the problem is we don't have a window to see if 1/4 of the stomach is empty, and therefore a simple thing that you can take care whenever you are eating is do not eat till you start feeling full. That's a simple way of understanding that your stomach has some empty space for digesting it. Another thing about how we should be eating is being spoken beautifully in the definition of Mitahara. It should be as an offering to Shiva. Shiva or Lord, be thankful that you are able to eat food, because if you're able to eat food, you're better than half of the world. There are so many people who are unable to have any kind of food, and therefore we must be grateful to the Lord for giving us a chance to serve that as offering to Him. Even Bhagavad Gita talks about Brahmarpanam Brahmahavihi. So the food that is offered is also Brahman, to whom it is offered is also Brahman. And therefore you can practice Vedanta while having food. And that is where yoga will beautifully change the whole dimension of having food. The other thing about praying before we start eating. Now, this is again a common practice across religions across the world. You pray before you start eating. The reason is whenever we pray, the autonomic nervous system in our brain has the parasympathetic nervous system, which is for rest and digest, and the sympathetic nervous system, which is for the works that we do in excitation. So if you want to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, prayer is probably one of the best ways of doing it. When your mind calms down, you can eat, digest, and rest the whole food. How not to eat? Probably the pictures are good enough. Please do not do multitasking when you're having food. Do not rush through your food. In Bangalore, we have yoga darshanis where we stand and eat. I would highly not recommend standing and eating, because you are no more focused on eating with a calm state of mind. You're rushing through your food. Okay. And also do not do binge eating, which is probably one of the common practices during the lockdown period that we are seeing. And this is again, in the Western world, it is spoken about eating mindfully. Okay. Whatever we talk in yoga is also translated that way, where I understand the purpose of what I am eating. When am I eating? Is it the right time to eat, or is there a different time at which I have to eat? What am I eating? Is that the right thing to eat? How am I eating? Am I slow? Am I quick? Am I feeling the food? How much am I eating? Where do I invest the energy that I get? Please remember that the food is your mind. And therefore, how do I invest the energy that I receive is an important question to answer. And therefore, eating mindfully is going to be the key. A few simple tips for eating well. Don't be in hurry. Please pray before you start. Feel the taste of the food. We say, that you should not be eating only with your tongue, but rather you should use all your sense organs to consume food. Okay. And that is why probably the best way of eating food is through how the Indians eat. They have everything mixed with their hands because they feel the texture of the food, the fragrance of the food, and the vision of the food. So use all your sense organs to consume food and not just tongue. A lot of times even that is absent when people are eating. And therefore, that is one of the things that needs to be done. You can use soft relaxing music when you're eating. No multitasking when you are consuming food because your mind must be fixed on the food. You should actually practice karma sukhaushalam there. Do only what is at your hands and nothing else. Sit at a real table, and what I mean by that is sit down when you are having food. I am not meaning that you should be sitting on a dining table or on the floor or something like that. If possible, please sit cross-legged on the floor. That is the best way of eating anyway. Respect your body and health. It is very, very important that we also cook in a good mood because Bhagavad Gita tells us that the mood of the person who's cooking gets transferred to the food. And therefore, if you are not in a good mood while cooking, that mood is going to get transferred to whoever is consuming that food. And cooking is going to be important. Then eat your favorite food last for two reasons. Number one, generally the favorite food is not the healthy one. Okay, it's generally the sweet or something like that. And therefore, if you're starting with it, you will end up eating it more, which is not good for your health. Second, if you're eating your favorite food at the end, you will leave the plate with that taste in your mouth, which is long lasting and you will enjoy the taste for a longer time. So a few tips on how you should be eating. Having spoken that, what should we be eating? And that is again where Hatha Yoga tells us beautifully that there should be food which is conducive to us, which includes good grains, wheat, rice, barley, milk, ghee, brown sugar, sugar candy, honey, dry ginger, patola fruits, vegetables, moong and such pulses, and pure water. So all these foods were considered to be conducive to yoga practice and therefore they must be consumed. It goes further in saying that the taste of the food should be sweetish, meaning it should be bland. Too much of spices is not going to be healthy ones. Also, it should be nourishing. A lot of ghee and milk should be used, which is nourishing to the dhatus, the sapta dhatus that are being spoken in Ayurveda, and it should be pleasing and suitable for an individual. So what do we eat? We eat what is seasonal and regional. The best things that nature gives us are from our own places and the time. And therefore, whatever is seasonal and regional is the best for us. The other thing that modern nutrition understands today is more you process food, it becomes bad for health. And therefore, if you want to remain healthy, consume least processed food, including, when I talk of processing, that includes the process of cooking. And therefore, cook minimally for the things that require cooking. The things that can be consumed without actually cooking should be taken like that. Your food must be balanced, meaning it should have all the nutrients that are required. It should be vegetarian and we will talk a little more on Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. The concept of Sattva, Rajas, Tamas has been beautifully explained by Sri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna is very, very precise in telling us what is the kind of food that a sattvic person would take and like, and what will it promote. So it is the Ayu, Sattva, Bala, Arogya, Sukha, Priti, Vivardhanaha, so beautifully explained. You know, the longevity, health, purity, cheerfulness, mind body harmony, all of that can be enhanced if you have sattvic food. What are those foods? They are fresh, natural, has a natural taste. You have not added on flavors. Okay, so it is the natural taste of food that you're consuming. They are comparatively bland, they are not very spicy, they are wholesome food. Also in naturopathy we talk of having lively food. Lively food means which has life in it. So sprouted things, which are green things, beautiful. So all of that is going to help us. The things that are nourishing, vegetarian, easy to digest. So all of that is sattvic food. And once again, I would go back to what I started with. Food is your mind. And therefore, if you want to go to a sattvic mindset, you will have to start eating sattvic food. Of course, then there is Rajasic food, which promotes the sensuality, aggressiveness, energy, desire, restlessness. And what is that kind of food? It is spicy, oily, sour, bitter, pungent, stimulants. If I have to give you an example, probably, when we have a cup of coffee or tea, instantly there is a lot of energy that comes in. People choose to have tea or coffee when they are drowsy. Okay, so from tamas to rajas, if you want to go, have a cup of coffee. But then you have 2, 3, 4 cups of coffee. The other issues like restlessness, the desire, the aggressiveness, all of that would start coming in. And therefore, we need to understand that we need to avoid stimulants in any way. The next thing probably is the tamasic food, which promotes lethargy, dullness, tiredness. Okay, and these are the foods which are fermented, overripe, packed, preserved, non-vegetarian food. A lot of times when the modern nutrition concept tells us that food gives us energy, then if we have a non-vegetarian food, a full meal, that should make us more energetic. But that's not how it happens. It's the other way around. You start feeling tired, you start feeling drowsy, lethargic, and that is because of the nature of the food and not just the energy. And that is why the calorie concept of food is kind of very, very limited, narrow way of looking at the food per se. And therefore, if somebody who is tamasic wants to start a journey to becoming a sattvic person, just switch the food along with the yoga practices that we can recommend. And that is going to take care not just of the body, but also of the mindset. And therefore, it's imperative that we choose what is right for us. A very important factor that comes from the modern nutrition perspective is the dietary fibers. A lot of dietary fibers should be consumed whenever we are having food, and that is because typically we talk of the bowel movements and how it will keep it healthy and all of that. But whenever we have a lot of dietary fibers, it controls the glucose absorption. It is known that in foods which has a lot of fibers, the absorption of glucose is very slow. And therefore, a myth that a lot of times is spoken is diabetics cannot eat fruits. Rather, diabetics can eat a lot of fruits because it has fibers, and the absorption of the glucose from your intestines is very, very slow. Okay. The other thing is it restricts the calorie intake, and that is why it is said that you start your food with salads. Okay. In Europe, they give you a lot of salads, okay? And that is because the other things that you consume in food have a lot of calories. And you consume salads, you fill your stomach. Basically, your stomach requires bulk. You have provided that. The amount of calories that you take is naturally going to go down. A new factor that is emerging in the last 20, 30 years in the scientific era is what is called as the gut microbiome. Meaning, we have always known that our intestines have some bacteria which are healthy. But now what we understand with a lot of scientific research, which is published in real good journals, including Nature, Science, and big names in the scientific community, it talks about what is called as the gut-brain axis. The gut-brain axis essentially means that there are chemicals produced by the bacteria which are present in your intestines, which regulate the activity of your brain. Now, looking at it from the Eastern understanding, this is a very new understanding for the modern science, but we have always spoken of the Shuddhi Kriyas for the abdomen. If your abdomen is clean, you will remain healthy. Whether it is yoga, which talks of Shat Karma, whether it is Ayurveda, which talks of Panchak Karma, whether it is naturopathy, which keeps talking of, your abdomen must be clean. We, the traditional health systems, have always understood the importance of the healthy abdomen. Now that can be achieved by increasing the dietary fibers, and which can happen if we have a lot of fruits, vegetables, and other things in our food. Whenever I talk of food and I keep telling people that they should turn vegetarians, sometimes even vegans, a lot of questions arise. People keep asking how, whether we will get this protein, whether we will have enough of vitamins, etc. And therefore, always I make it a point that I keep talk couple of slides for this particular topic. The human biology, by the structure of jaw, the teeth, the nails, the digestive enzymes, the length of intestine, we are very similar to the animals which are herbivorous in origin. Whereas the animals which are carnivorous have a very different structure of their body by the biology itself. So nature has not created us to consume non-vegetarian food. Unfortunately, we keep doing that. Okay, the length of human intestines is about 20 meters, and the moment you keep something for a long period of time, the non-vegetarian food, it will start getting putrefied. So apart from the tamasic nature of the non-vegetarian food, there is problem with the toxins that can get produced when it is in our body. Of course, there are moral, ethical, and medical issues with meat. We keep talking of ahimsa in yoga, one of the yamas and niyamas that we learn in the basic set of practices that we need to follow whenever we are in path of yoga is ahimsa. And consuming flesh is definitely something not that way. Big questions are up there about the hygiene that is maintained in the poultry industry and all the other places where meats are sold. The hormones are injected because they want rapid growth. Antibiotics are consumed, and antibiotics are a major problem because through the flesh that is consumed, people do get what is called as antimicrobial resistance, which means that our body becomes resistant to the antibiotics, and that creates a hell lot of problems. In fact, in 2010, the World Health Organization actually, every year they have a theme for that they commemorate. In 2010, the theme that World Health Organization commemorated was antimicrobial resistance. It's a huge problem for medical fraternity because we are sensitized to these antibiotics, and also the bacteria inside us that can create a lot of health problems. Sometimes people also question if the vegetarians would lack power or abilities if they don't consume enough amount of so-called energy-giving foods. And I have pictures of some people from different areas of the walks of life. Our Prime Minister Modi ji, he has been working for 7 years, not taken a single day break, and he works 18 hours a day. One of the things that contributes to it is the food that he consumes. And that is why it is very, very important that we need to understand that you don't really require the energy that comes from non-vegetarian food to run a country like India, which is as complex as we get. We have Virat Kohli, who is probably one of the topmost cricketers in the world, turned vegan for last 3 years, and his performance is at peak. We have Djokovic, who is world #1 for real long time. He's a vegan himself. We have Serena and Venus Williams. Tennis is probably one of the most grilling sports that you can think about. And these people are at top of their game for real long time, even with the vegetarian vegan food. We have Amitabh Bachchan, who is turned vegetarian for really long time in his life, and he's acting at his age, which probably even the younger actors cannot do. On the other side, we have got Lewis Hamilton, who is also a vegetarian. He drives in cars which are extremely fast. A split-second reflex is going to create crashes, and therefore there is not a specific area that the energy or power or ability that a vegetarian or a vegan would lack if they turn vegetarians or vegans. And therefore we should not have any doubts that we can adapt a healthy lifestyle. There should not be any problem with that. My introduction was started by Subbu Bhaiya with Yuktahara Vihara, and I would like to end with that. Your food should become your part of yoga sadhana, and that has been spoken by Sri Krishna. Yuktahara Viharasya Yukta Cheshtasya Karmasu Yukta Swapna Avabodhasya Yogo Bhavati Dukkhaha. And therefore, if we want to remain healthy, if we want to stay away from misery, we have to follow the path of yoga, which is not limited to asana or pranayama or meditation. It is all 24 hours we must be doing yoga through our ahara, the food, vihara, the nature. Our nature has to be modified. Your thought process, your even the sleep and dreams. So all of that has to be modified. I'm so happy that Indica Yoga is bringing all people who are related to yoga, all walks of yoga together to give this message. And I wish all of you would start walking on this path of yoga, even through your food. And thank you very much for your patient listening. If there are any doubts or questions, I think we can take them now.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Apar, for this wonderful presentation. And we're all so happy to hear from you all these things. And there are, I think today would be the session where we had maximum number of questions also the reason past, because it's on food. And food is something that without which there is no life at all. And as you rightly said, in yoga, that is a very important component. Sri Aurobindo says all life is yoga. So everything that we do in life, it could be, right from the breath we take, we live, we sleep, or food, everything forms important aspects of yoga. That way, it's very important and essential to know more about it. And questions are just like that pouring in. And it's like they want more clarity. Of course, that you have covered all aspects of the sattvic food and in the yogic perspective you have presented. But people, because we have lot of our own way in which we have been taking food in the past, so people
Yes.
want a lot of clarity from you. So I would like to start from, yeah, and then we have very nice appreciations from, what Jayo Lal had appreciated, thanks giving thank in all multiple languages of the world, and everybody here in the chat box have been giving wonderful explanations, wonderful feedbacks. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
one is, I would start with this question Rashma NK had asked. So she had asked that Ayurveda principle seems to be different from what you had presented.
Yeah.
Ayurvedic doctors recommend 3 meals and one exchange of fruits between meals. So what do you like to say about it?
Yeah, the thing is, when it is coming to a specific health problem, there might be some modifications from the deviation from what we have spoken. But what I spoke essentially was for people who are healthy, number one, who are in path of yoga and want to have food as a part of their yoga sadhana. And for them, definitely what has been spoken is that they should be having minimum meals and not having number of meals. The other thing that we understand with the modern scientific understanding even now, I think in 2019, this particular paper was published in one of the leading journals of nutrition. We understand that if you're having multiple small meals, which was one of the concepts for even diabetes, and this particular study was done for diabetic patients only, they tend to have lesser improvements than people who have 2 meals a day. Okay, this was comparing 2 meals with 6 meals a day, with same calories and same amount of things that you consume. And therefore, probably we will have to start revisiting what we have learned in the perspective of food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So also one more interesting question that I see from Sri Raghavan Iyer, who says, when you mention liquid,
Yes.
I need to understand, does liquid include water also?
Yes.
Because many say do not drink water while having food. And some
Yes.
say have water half an hour before food. I personally have heard an Ayurvedic doctor suggesting that you should take water in along with the food also in between, like this.
Yes. Yeah, I think Raghavan has also given a subsequent question about expanding the concept of liquid during food.
Yes.
Yes, I would do that. It is not water that I'm talking about. Typically, all of us do have some form of liquid that we consume along with our food, whether it is in the form of curry, whether it is in the form of rasam or sambar or something like that, dal. So we do consume some amount of liquid when we are consuming food. So it is taking care of that. Also, I would recommend buttermilk because that has something called as the probiotic substances, which is the healthy bacteria which are required for us, and that is going to be helpful. Water drinking should be avoided before and after, soon after food for sure, because it would dilute the digestive enzymes and that will impair the way digestion happens.
Yeah, thank you, Krapar. Again, one more, when we are talking of liquid, one more narrative about milk, which adds up. So
Yes.
also, also your thoughts on milk, we want to know. It's from Sri Ramanathan. So he says milk is not available anywhere. Since all milk is kind of raw milk is not available anywhere because milk is pasteurized. And so he also mentions that in India, even the cows are injected. So therefore, we don't get the direct pure milk. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, if you know the source of milk, then you should have it. Basically, if you have what you call as desi cow milk, that is probably one of the healthiest that you can think about. But today, unfortunately, we don't have any that kind of source. And therefore, if you don't know, then I would say we'll have to trade carefully in that territory, because we don't really know what is the kind of hygiene. I mentioned that while I was talking of poultry, but it's the same thing with the dairy industry as well. And dairy, unfortunately, has become industry. So that is one of the problems. But definitely, I think the Yoga Parivara that we have here, we would have people who would know the sources of having desi milk. We are talking of what is called as A2 milk now, which is more of non-processed milk that is being provided from the dairies itself. So there is a kind of awareness that is getting generated with people, as well as on the industry side as well. But larger the demand for any consumer product, I think that is very, very important. The larger the demand, automatically the things would be cheaper. At this point, I think it is very costly because it is not feasible for people. And therefore, larger number of people joining hands together in this mission, I think we would have that easy.
Yes. Also, another, I think it's one of the most repeatedly asked question from various participants, from Anju, Prabhita, and Forum Trivedi, and many such people on the fermented food. So, when you say the fermented food, because South India, especially idli dosa, we don't have a life without idli dosa. So, so South Indian food involves a lot of fermented recipes, and they are eaten on a daily basis since childhood.
Yes.
To
Yes.
what extent, so is it okay to eat it? So,
Yeah, fermented food, when I talk about, it is okay to eat it at home. Uh, but essentially, again, you will have to follow the other principles of what we have understood, because a lot of times this is a common experience that you have a lot of masala dosa outside, you start feeling heavy after that. Okay, and typically it's not because of the fermentation, because they also add a lot of baking soda and other things. Okay, so at home, when you prepare, probably it is okay, but I would not recommend that outside.
okay. And at the currently, because of the lockdown, anyhow, the outside
Yeah,
food are banned, and we
that's
are,
the best thing. And when I was talking about cooking in a good mood and the cooking person's mood getting transferred to food, if you have peeped in the kitchens of all these hotels, which we can in Bangalore, they
yes.
are just rushing through food. So what is the kind of essence of the mindset that we are getting when we are consuming food outside? And therefore, I think as much as we can eat at home, and that is probably the healthiest way of doing it.
I had been doing some kind of online counseling during this lockdown periods. And once I got a call from a lady whose wife, whose husband is so much depressed because every morning he would go for a walk and have a cup of coffee in a restaurant and have it with his friends, and then only come back. And for the past, more than 3 months, he's not able to have that, and therefore he is so frustrated. And we
Yes.
need to have an elaborate session on counseling to bringing back. So that's a situation, right? People that need to understand these things at the right time. Yes. Also, we have an interesting question from Dr. Jayaprakash Gupta, who's a
Yeah.
very regular participant in our sessions. So he says, meat is not sattvic food according to Ayurveda and all the yogic perspectives that you presented. But Western religious leaders, for example, like the Pope, they all eat meat and still have a sattvic mind and thought. So if food food and mind so becomes paradoxical. So when and how can meat eating within limits can be resolved in modern times? Is there any thoughts on this that you would like to share?
Thank you. That's a very, very insightful question. In fact, couple of aspects to this particular thing is I would look at Krishna as one of the examples who keeps telling about doing dharma. And a lot of times his acts may not appear to be dharma. Okay, he steals butter, all the leelas. I think Sububhaya is the best person to talk about it. We just loved the way he used to narrate all that. But then at what mindset was it done? Krishna was established in yoga and then he was doing it. And therefore, if you are established in the yoga sthiti and then you consume any kind of food, that may not affect you. But what we are talking today, we are not the people who are yogis already. We are yoga sadhakas. We are in the path. And when we are in the path, probably we will have to look at every small little step that we take in the path. And food is definitely that step which will, at this point when our mind is not really under our control, and at that point probably we will have to think about having the vegetarian food, because the sattva that you consume from it is going to be converted as your mindset.
Yes, thank you. And we have another interesting question, probably connecting and taking it further from Dr. Ravindra Murthy, who says, Dear doctor, I am a physician and a vegetarian, but some of the non-vegetarian colleagues of mine ask me two questions commonly for which I do not have the answer.
Vitamin B12 and protein?
Yeah.
I did not read your question, but
I don't know. It is about, are there any longitudinal studies looking at morbidity and morality, morbidity and mortality among vegetarian and non-vegetarian? And also, if you posit mortality, are you contenting that plants have no life? This is again from my non-vegetarian colleagues.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I think 2-3 questions that keep coming about whenever we talk of vegetarianism is this comparison of the health status of an individual. There are definitely longitudinal studies which talk about how obesity and obesity related problems are more common among people who are non-vegetarians, and they are lesser in vegetarians. There are also studies about better heart related issues lesser in the vegetarians than the non-vegetarian things. Also, there are beautiful links about the poultry and dairy industry with a lot of types of cancers. I would highly recommend a book called as Anti-Cancer, written by Dr. David. I'm not very sure of the full name right now, but this particular book is written by an American neurologist who got cancer. And he went in length and depth of how he got cancer. And he blames it to not having what is called as the functional food, which is the trend in the West today, which is essentially live food that we are talking about, having the sattva in the diet that we consume. And therefore, it is not a questioned thing that, vegetarians have better health than non-vegetarians. Of course, people keep questioning about sources of two things, proteins and vitamin B12.
B12. There are many questions on B12 also now slowly pouring in.
Yeah. So when I spoke of the fibers and the gut microbiome, which was the bacteria in the gut, now those were the bacteria that produce vitamin B12. It is known to human being. Okay. But unfortunately, again, we consume a lot of foodstuffs which has antibiotics, and these bacteria die, and then therefore vitamin B12 is not produced by it. And therefore, if we start having a more natural food, more fiber rich food, and generate the gut microbiome, vitamin B12 will never be a problem. Regarding proteins, we have enough sources of proteins in the plant origin. There is no problem. I think answering the third part of the question, which was whether from the moral perspective, killing plants is allowed or not. The life cycle of a plant what are the kind of plants that we are trying to eat? We are eating them in the life cycle, which is a very short one. So there is nothing like and you need not really destroy life to consume things. You can just, in fact, even for the sadhana, we take tulasi, but there is a way of doing it. We actually pray to the tulasi. We request the offering. Similarly, food, when it is offered, you are not just killing plants for your satisfaction, but rather it is a symbiosis that we have with nature that we are trying to generate.
Yes, very nice. So I think you have brought in all those dimensions which were sorted. And also when we are talking of the liquid food, you were mentioning about more of buttermilk, but like in India, especially, we are more used for dahi, and even in the Western lifestyle and eating more of yogurt and all. So is it okay to have buttermilk and yogurt at dinner time? Also, is it okay to eat kimchi? I don't know what is kimchi. So Ritu Dagal had asked this question, and Suresh has also asked this question. So dahi, is it better to avoid more milk? So I think because for many of us, we take for granted dahi and buttermilk are kind of
Same, same.
same. It's like a mother and child. So I think more clarity you need to give on this.
Yeah, I think if I have to put in perspective, I would rather say milk at this point, which we are consuming, is of least priority. Curd comes in between, buttermilk at the highest.
Okay.
Because in the Ayurvedic understanding, curd is considered to be a heavy food. Okay, and buttermilk makes it lagu. It makes it easily digestible. So when you dilute it, make it fresh, it is going to help you. So that is the way it is looked at.
Very nice. And also, I think it was a reflection of my mind that Renuka Jape had asked. So
Okay.
what about eating ice cream after lunch or dinner? How does it affect our digestion, or is it good to have it? So nowadays we see a lot of sattvic ice creams also around in Bangalore, especially we see. So
No, I would also talk about the conflict about the desire to eat and not having something because it is not good for health. And I think Subhabuya is aware that Nagaratna Didi keeps talking about what is called as sweet meditation. It is essentially you eat what you like, but in a quantity, in a manner which is meditative to you. Okay, so if you feel the taste of your food on your tongue, keep the substance that you like on your tongue for as long as you want. So your ice cream should last on your tongue for say 30 minutes, no problem. On the flip side of it, I mean, I'm not 30 minutes may not be a really practical thing, but eat it slowly, eat it mindfully, and eat it in less quantity. Then it should be okay. And whenever we say about less quantity, it is again a relative term. For somebody a scoop is too much. For somebody a bucket may not be enough. And therefore, realistically looking at the quantity and eating anything for that matter, not just ice cream but sweets. All Brahmanas have habit of eating sweets. That's been part and parcel of the tradition. But that sweet was what is spoken in Mitahara as well. It is rather the natural sweet that we consume from the food. That is what is ideal.
yes. Also, in this lockdown situation, we are not able to get fresh things go out every time and get. So we need to store at home, more things. That's where another question is there from many of our participants. Like, what about the refrigerated food that we take?
Ideally, you should not be doing it. But unfortunately, in the forced situations, you don't have a choice. So as much as you can, probably you should look at eating fresh. But if it is not possible at all, then you can have a little deviation from what is ideal.
And I think even otherwise, for example, what my mother used to do, she used to take the vegetables little ahead of the cooking time, keep it out for some time, getting
Yes,
exposed to the nature, and then cook those. But sometimes now the cooked food itself refrigerated, and then they reuse it. So
exactly.
they use that's an unfortunate situation.
People actually have no time, and therefore they cook for the whole week and then they refrigerate it and then microwave it. So everything is going to be bad.
Correct. And also there is a again important about the fruits, eating fruits. So for example, Prabhita ji has asked, I eat fruits around 10 a.m.
Mhm.
Lunch and light dinner. So is it the right way? And
Yes.
somebody has asked, is it right to eat fruits in between, for example, a lunch and a dinner? And also one more question is, some people suggest that you need to have only one fruit, like one variety, a mono fruit at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some
Yeah.
people would recommend a salad, kind of having varieties of fruits together to
Mm,
eat. So which
mm.
is the right way of consuming fruits as well?
Yeah, mono fruits is the best way of doing it. I'll start going backward from the questions that you asked me. That is because it's easier for your body to digest things one at a time. Okay, so therefore mixing of it is not the right way. Uh, there should be a gap between raw food and cooked food. I also saw that in one of the questions in the chat box, I believe. So there should be a gap because the way your body digests the cooked and the raw food is slightly different. Okay. So ideally what you should have is, before you have your main meal, say half an hour before that, you have your fruits or vegetables, and then so that your stomach is already full, there is a gap, and then you are consuming the meal. So that is one of the ways of doing it. It is okay to eat fruits in between, and that is because they are natural, they're easily digestible. Okay, but again we will have to quantify what we are doing. It is not the reason. From a very biological point of view, every time you're eating anything, that gets converted into glucose in the body, for which you require insulin to be produced. And the moment insulin is produced over and over, the tendency of you becoming fat is more, the tendency of uh, uh, diabetes is more, and all of that. And therefore it is very, very important that we look at it in a rational way when we are talking of, it is okay to consume something. The quantity has to be monitored.
Yeah. And also, like, what do you say between drinking the fruit as a juice? Now, many, have this habit of making juice and drink, or is it good to eat fruits as such as raw, or drinking as a fruit juice?
Making it juice is a process. And I mentioned during my presentation that processing is bad. But for people who have, say, some problem with their teeth, chewing is a problem. For them, it is naturally easier to have a juice. But there are definitely benefits of having it, uh, chewing it, because then you're doing it for yourself. The satisfaction that you can get by chewing it will be much better. But it is okay to have juice which is not filtered.
Hmm.
If you filter out, then it is going to be bad.
Nice. And so when you especially eat, drink out in a juice center outside, the first thing they do is to make it, and immediately they have a big filter. They
Filter.
pour into that. That's
Exactly.
how they are going
Exactly.
to give us that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's where making it at home and taking is more important. And you did speak about diabetes as well, and I think this
Mhm.
question is also answered in a way, but still for clarity, I would like to put forth from
Okay.
Raksha Lohia was asked, if you are a diabetic, then how can you do intermittent fasting, as the doctors say to eat every 2 hours?
Yeah. I mentioned this particular thing even during the presentation. I think no, later on, there was a study which came in 2019. People were given 2 meals a day in one group, and there were other group which were given 6 meals a day, multiple small meals every 2 hours. And the amount of calories were similar. The amount of things that you consume were very similar in both the groups. What was seen was the people who consumed 2 meals a day had a better control on their blood sugar levels, HbA1c, body weight, etc. Okay, and this study was not done in India. It was somewhere in the Europe, if I'm not wrong, somewhere in Sweden or Norway. Okay, so what we definitely understand is 2 meals a day is the right way of doing it. Again, the 6 meals concept is because you consume a lot of medicines. In fact, today we are talking of what is called as diabetes reversal. Until very recently, diabetes reversal was not thought about. But 2017, there is a group in scientists in UK who published papers in real big journals. Once again, Lancet was the journal in which this got published, which talks of food can help you to reverse diabetes. You don't really have to do anything much. I think 1980s and 90s when Dean Ornish came up and said, you can reverse heart diseases. Nobody believed him. Today we are talking of diabetes reversal, very much possible. I'm involved with a group of people, including my father, who is doing it online for a lot of people now. We have already four batches of about 20 each, close to 80 people. And what we recommend is definitely 2 meals a day. And we definitely have a lot of dietary restrictions. And what we see is most of the people who were even on insulin, they could leave their insulin, their oral hypoglycemic drugs came down. So a lot of that is very much doable. It's just that, you need to discipline yourself a little more and make yogic lifestyle. So once we have that as a part of what we do, I think there should not be any problem.
That's where Krishna also said, yogastha kuru karmani. Do whatever you do, but being established in yoga, so that is more important.
Yes.
And I think one last question we would take is Brigadier K. Birendra Singh has asked, request if age-wise food classification can be recommended because food habits change with age as well.
Mm-hmm.
So can there be an age-wise food classification recommended? He has asked.
Yeah, in the younger age, in fact, nutrition-wise, there are 2 or 3 specific groups of people whom we say they should be having a lot of energy-giving things and other things. One is the younger age group when your body is growing. Say till you are reaching your teenage or 16 to 18 years of age, you should be consuming a lot of energy giving food. And at that point, probably having a lot of ghee, lot of other things, milk, fruits, all of that is allowed. There is no problem with that. After which you will have to start restricting it. But at the same time, I'm also aware of a lot of food joints, these fast food joints, where people take their young ones these are toddlers. They don't even know what they are eating. But then when you're culturing your children to eat in a particular manner, then we may not have a chance of complaining later on that they want a pizza or a burger or something like that. And therefore, if we can culture children to eat healthy, it is going to be very, very important. The other thing that usually is asked to us is when I talk to a patient with diabetes, obesity, or high blood pressure, and I recommend some dietary modifications, they would say, yes, we will do these modifications, but what about our children? They would want to eat this and that. My simple answer to you is going to be that if you have diabetes or hypertension or obesity, your children have a higher chance of having it. And therefore, they need to start right away. Okay. And therefore, the dietary modifications have to happen even for children. They should eat healthy. But within healthy, you can definitely have good energy giving things for them. The second group of people is probably the mothers, expecting mothers. They need to consume a lot of fresh, healthy food. The third group is probably lactating mothers, the mothers who are giving milk to the children. So these are probably the three age groups where you need to really modify it a little more, have a lot more energy giving things than just simply having it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Apar, for all this wonderful clarity. I think this is one of the session where we had maximum number of questions, to the extent at least I have whenever I have been the host and anchoring. So it is more than 63 questions which have come. Of course, a few are kind of repetitive, and I think one last question. I think Renuka ji is always reflecting my style, eating style and things also. She asked about ice cream, which I had in my mind. She has
Yes.
also asked about coffee and tea. Has become part of life, not avoidable. So if to drink, so when to drink, and can we drink at least 2 times? Is it okay? And all kind of thing, which is many, because we always, when we heard from somebody like you, we are motivated. And it is like a Smashana Vairagya. The other day, we had Smriti and Adina Menon speaking about Smashana Vairagya in the session of Mauna. So it's like that. We have few times, and afterwards we again go back to our own usual, routines of having all this.
Yeah.
So what do you say?
Yeah, ideally you should not be consuming because it is a Rajasic food. In case it has become so much of a lifestyle, then probably once a day should be okay. Do not have it empty stomach.
Oh, because many of us, I'm sure the whole of this country, they have an early morning habit, of having a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
tea, in empty stomach.
The reason why it is important is a lot of times it can lead to acidity. Basically, it's a stimulant. Okay. And a lot of times, like you said, early morning people would like to have a coffee because a lot of people are dependent on that for passing their motions also.
Exactly, I was about to say this.
And this is something that is very, very common that we see in naturopathy centers when people come. We don't give any tea or coffee. So first 2 days are terrible for people. They get headaches, they are very uncomfortable, they are restless, all of that. But once your body gets used to a newer environment, then there is no problem. And our problem is we get so scared of that one episode of headache, okay, that one episode of discomfort, that we don't really, a lot of times we know that it is not good for us. Okay, having it empty stomach is going to create a lot of digestive issues as well. Okay, whether it is caffeine or tannin that is there in tea or coffee, it is definitely something known to create problems.
Yeah, thank you. And then one last question, I think on millets, we have today a lot of, suggestions about millets. And at the same time, I've seen many people who have taken to the core, meticulously the millet diet, but also they have got deteriorating their health as well. So how do we take, do you recommend us to take millet foods, or in what proportion that we need to take? Can we mix it up with our normal food, what we are taking, routine food also?
I would simply say it in a simple statement. Nothing in the universe is created perfect. So there is no superfood as such. It is the balance that you get with different kinds of foods that is going to be important. Okay. A lot of times, people keep talking of how olive oil is the best and we would like to have that only. People from South India would say coconut oil, and there is a lot of fighting. But please understand that not a single foodstuff is being created perfect by nature. And therefore, as much as we can mix, it is going to be useful, number one. The other question that, the other thing that we need to keep in mind here is seasonal and regional, which I mentioned during the presentation as well. It is going to be important. A lot of times in the name of millets, we get things which are not good for us. Okay. We have definitely heard of an apple a day keeps doctor away, but we need to understand that this is an English saying and therefore it is for England. Okay, in India, if you want to have an apple a day which is produced in Himachal or Kashmir and brought to you, it has to be processed, and therefore consume local things. If you are in Bangalore or Mysore or Mandya, probably ragi is the millet of choice. Okay, but if you are in South Kendra and other coastal Karnataka, then you can have parboiled rice, which is your staple food over there. So your food habits have to be in line with the nature around you.
Very nice, very true. And one, I think once we spoke about coffee and tea, we have a very interesting question from one of our very active panelists, Shri Anuradha ji, who is asked a spiritual question.
Okay.
So she asked, what do you say about alcohol? Some say a glass of wine is good as well. And now we see in this period of COVID-19, we are always using sanitizer, which is alcohol. So some people, have been telling, when we have to sanitize our hand, what about sanitizing our body with alcohol?
Actually, there is no sanitization that happens. It is actually insanity that happens inside. And therefore, alcohol definitely not recommended. In fact, if you are following healthy diet, you don't really require alcohol to clean it up. So if you are clean inside already, why do you require an external agent to clean it? And that cleaning has to happen through your food. In fact, I remember all the time whenever Nagratna Didi spoke of food, and people keep asking this question to her also, she keeps saying, alcohol is not food. It is not considered to be something that comes in. So therefore,
I think in some Western countries, they have wine as a part of their diet.
Yes, but we will also have to understand the kind of nature that they have. They have extremes of weather, which we do not really have. Okay, and therefore the cultures are going to be different. And what we're talking here is anything that intoxicates you is not good. So, I mean, the fact is, a lot of times we know the answer for this question, but we still intend to ask it because, we can't resist it.
Yes. We bring kind of anukula.
Exactly. Even for tea or coffee, is it okay to have once a day? And as a naturopathy doctor, I keep getting this question, sir, is it okay to have an ice cream or non-veg sometimes, So
I have tried even having it with kind of coconut milk, coffee with coconut milk, coffee with other things also, but not want to compromise on the cup of coffee. Thank you so much, Dr. Apar. I think we still have, even though it is already 8:28, we are supposed to end our session. We still have the participants who are retained until now. And we had more than 170 participants who have joined us in Zoom, the direct session. And usually parallelly, we have a lot of people watching it in the Facebook and YouTube channels as well, and who are actively participating in the live discussion. They still, the major number of participants are still active with us, and the questions are only increasing. Because of course, with all this, what we have seen, it could be about asana, pranayama, yoga nidra, and everything. So food is something which is inevitable. Whether you practice yoga or not, it is very much inevitable. And very well, today a satisfying thing that I think both of us have conveyed is food is also very much part of yoga as per the shastras and everything. So that way, even if I don't go and do asana, pranayama, or meditation, even if I eat properly, my meal, then I can still claim that I have been doing yoga. So I think this satisfaction people have got with which they are still actively participating. And one last question from my side, personally, that I would like to ask you is, you were quoting from the scriptures, for example, from Hatha Yoga Pratipika and all about the yoga, the food diet with which you've given. But I think most of those dietary prescriptions were for those extreme, people who are full-time yoga practitioners. So yoga was not for them also like a half an hour practice or 1 hour yoga practice. So when they mention about a yoga sadhaka for whom they have taken the yoga jivana completely, who are not in common laukika grihastha life, the mundane the life that they were leading. So they have left everything and they have gone into be in their, if you see in the Hatha Yoga also, it's mentioned about the place where the yogi practice yoga sadhana,
Absolutely, yes.
the mata and all. So that shows that it's not in the regular normal condition. So do you think those prescriptions which they are given for those extreme yoga sadhakas are also applicable for we common people even today in the normal mundane life?
Yes, definitely, because what you want to achieve in your life, everything is yoga. I mean, it doesn't really matter whether you are doing yoga or not doing yoga, whether you are a yoga sadhaka per se or not. The intention of life is to reach the supreme at the end of the day. Okay, and therefore the principles that are being given, I'm not saying that it has to be 100%. It cannot be 100% followed even today. But then in the frame that we have with our current daily life, a lot of things are probably not possible because of COVID. There can be a lot of restrictions in what we do, but the principles remain the same. There is no going away from seasonal or regional food. There is no going away from sattvic, rajasic, tamasic manasthiti. Okay, and therefore, in any condition, if you want to be excited, if you want to come to a rajasic mindset, you have a cup of coffee. So if that is being spoken by Krishna long back, it doesn't mean that it doesn't apply today. If you have multiple cups of coffee, you get restless, which is again told by him. And therefore, the principles are very much applicable even today. There is no doubt with it. There is no question about it.
Very nice. Thank you so much. I think the people still bring a lot of new other dimensions connected with the food. The questions are going, like Akshaya Patra of questions that still we are getting. But I think we would definitely share all those questions to Dr. Apar, and then we would see how he can still share all your share his insights and answers to all your questions. We are very thankful to all the participants for their very active participation by asking. As the Bible says, ask and it shall be given unto you, seek and ye shall find. That's what even the Upanishads, it's all always about asking and giving. The Upanishad teachers will not go straight away teaching, but it's all about Prashnottara. So the more you ask, the questions are answered, and then clarity comes more better. And we are very happy that a lot of good active participation from all our participants. So before I get to ask you about how the people can further be in touch with you, I'm sure many are very impressed by the session today. So they want to further contact you to get probably many would want to personally, there are many personal questions which I tried to avoid it. They would want to know about what diet that suits me. I am having this problem, so what is that I can do? So they can maybe have a consultation with you also. So before we get to know how people can contact you and what is your final message from Dr. Apar today. So we would like to have the announcement of today's sessions. For today would be the last day with 3 sessions, and tomorrow onwards we would be having only 2 sessions a day. That is important for the next 10 days until the end of this month. We are going to, as we all know, we have extended. We were supposed to conclude it formally, the Global Festival of Yoga today, but due to the overwhelming response and people are, and then we have more and more good people, whose knowledge we would like to bring into this platform, and therefore we have extended it. But from tomorrow, we are going to have only 2 sessions. The morning session, as usual, will continue. The evening session, the day session between 11:30 to 12:30 would not be there conducted. So all our participants be aware of this, and also be aware that the sessions are extended until the end of this month. Like my friend Anuradha ji was sharing that, putting a brake in a car, it suddenly happens. All of a sudden we do. But putting a brake in a ship, it happens gradually, slowly it happens. So I think that is how bringing a break to this grand festival of yoga, the Global Festival of Yoga. We were not able to make it today. We want to take it slowly so that all these thoughts that we have taken, many had asked about how do we follow? Can you repeat these sessions? What we have done, can you repeat? That's where we have also put all these in the social media channels of YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. You can still see all those recorded versions, and you can keep looking at. They are going to be ever available for all of us. And also we are making a kind of a wonderful team, the panel of all these people, where further more sessions, these have been like kind of icebreakers, initial tidbit sessions we have been having. Further, Indica Yoga has a lot of plans to bring, continuous learning. Yoga sadhana is a continuous learning, right? So we would like to have continued learning sessions from all these experts whom we have had. So all this information will be shared to you appropriately. So thank you all for the wonderful participation. So we go with the announcement for today's program. Yeah. So here we have the session 11:30 to 1 o'clock today. We have the session, the way to practice everywhere. Even when we were speaking about yoga is all in life. So the way to practice everywhere, it is not restricted to practice it at one particular mat or something. So this session we are having from young aspirant Ben Viet, who is going to teach us on Qigong, and as a yoga teacher as well. So he had made a lot of walks, from the country where he is to India as well. He has made, he takes a long walk and comes. He's a wonderful yoga traveler, and he is going to be with us. More we can know about him in the session. So don't miss it. It's going to be a very interesting session, giving us wonderful insights today at 11:30 to 1 p.m. by Ben Viet. And also in the evening, we are going to have yes, it is our Anuradha Chaudhary who is going to speak about Sanskrit as yoga and Sanskrit for yoga. So it's going to be a wonderful session by Shri Anuradha Chaudhary, who is assistant professor at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Kharagpur, who is a very important organizer as a part of this Global Festival of Yoga. Today is going to be her session as well, bringing wonderful insights of Sanskrit and yoga. So this is going to be today's program, and thank you all for being with us. I now request Dr. Apar Sahuji to share the means how people can get in touch with him, how can they follow him for further interactions, through Dr. Apar Sahuji.
Yeah, during the lockdown, there was a lot of people having health issues, and they wanted to connect with people who can talk to them and help them. So we started a small online initiative called as Kalya Health. We have a Facebook page, we have a YouTube channel where we are bringing in a lot of videos which are related to health and wellness, the principles of food, yoga, naturopathy, and other things. So you could follow us there. You can write to us on email. I'll just share that probably, so that it becomes easier. Yeah, so you can email us. You can follow us on YouTube. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. If you want to have a personal connect, you can always have a WhatsApp as well. Of course, if you come to Prashanti, you can always come and meet us. We are always there. Very close by, we live near to Prashanti.
So Prashanti is the residential campus of S. Vyasa University.
Yeah.
Prashanti Kutiram is the residential campus of S. Vyasa University, where Arogya Dharma, the health center, is also there. So that is what Prashanti is. Yeah. Because nowadays people more know it as S. Vyasa than Prashanti. Yeah. So that's for clarity I just shared. Yes, I think we have got all the means of reaching you through the YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and WhatsApp and whatnot. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Apar, for all these wonderful things. And, I think to sum up what we have learned from you today, I say, body and mind have a link. Food is that which makes you think. Wrong food makes your health to shrink. Make a choice to eat and drink. Junk food can cause you roga, carbonated coffee, tea, beda. Food is that which, food is God, says the Veda. Food is God, says the Veda. Eating right is also yoga. So join with me in this fight. Let's all learn to eat right. Let's all learn to eat right. So thank you, Dr. Apar, for this wonderful session. So now we go to your final take-home message. What is that punch that you want to give us with which we go back today?
I think the punch is Yuktahara Vihara. The way you started it, that is the way we need to lead a life. And health is just a byproduct. Okay. If we live a yogic lifestyle, definitely health is going to be there as a byproduct on the path. And therefore, we must follow the path of yoga, whether it is in the asana, pranayama, meditation practice, or the yama niyama, or the food that we follow, in the ahara and vihara, and the whole of our life has to become the journey of yoga. I think with that, I would like to really thank Indica Yoga for giving me an opportunity to come and talk to all of you. Vinay Bhaiya, Anuradha ji, Omkar I must mention because he was the one who connected me with Vinay Bhaiya. Thank you very much. And I wish all of you a healthy life, a yogic life.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think with this, we will finish the session or also go for our breakfast. Remember all the food tips which Dr. Apar has shared with us. So maybe for somebody breakfast, some people it's dinner, some people it's lunch, because we have literally a global participant who are actively participating. So let's remember all these food principles with which we go back for our sessions today. Thank you all so much. And 11:30 again, we join us for the next session. Thank you. Namaste.